When I found out my husband spent 20 grand from our savings on another woman, I didn't scream. I just laughed, because that's when I realized how long I'd been living in a lie. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Laura Quinn. I'm 38, a stay-at-home wife who thought she had a happy marriage. My husband, Ethan, works as a business consultant. He's the kind of man who walks into a room and owns it, confident, well-spoken, always in control. I used to admire that about him. Lately, though, something felt off. He came home later than usual, spent more time on his phone, and smiled at texts he wouldn't let me see. I tried to convince myself it was just work stress, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One morning, while paying bills, I noticed a large withdrawal, $20,000 gone from our joint savings. I froze. That money was supposed to be for our future, maybe a vacation or fixing the old roof. My first thought was that he'd made a big business purchase. When I asked him about it that night, he didn't even look up from his phone. It's business expenses, Laura. Don't worry about it. His voice was calm but sharp, like he was talking to a child. I pressed again, saying it seemed like too much to just disappear. He sighed, rolled his eyes, and muttered, "You wouldn't understand. You don't work. You just sit here all day." That was the first time he said it. Just a housewife. The words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to cry, but instead I smiled. Something inside me cracked, and through that crack, a quiet kind of strength started to grow. I decided not to ask again. If he thought I was stupid, fine. Let him believe that. I'd find out the truth myself. That night, while he snored beside me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about every year I'd spent supporting him, trusting him. Now that trust was gone, replaced by a cold determination. I didn't know what I'd uncover yet, but one thing was certain. I wasn't going to be the stupid housewife anymore. The next morning, while folding Ethan's clothes, a small white slip of paper slid from his jacket pocket. I almost tossed it aside, but the gold print caught my eye, the name of a luxury boutique I could never afford to walk into. I smoothed it out and read the numbers. $20,000. My heart thudded so hard it drowned out the sound of the washing machine. The receipt listed a diamond bracelet and a perfume set, both gift-wrapped. My hands trembled, but my mind went strangely quiet. It wasn't a business expense. It was personal. That night, I waited for him to come home. He walked through the door smelling faintly of cologne I didn't recognize, loosened his tie, and dropped his keys on the counter like nothing was wrong. I held the receipt out to him. "Want to explain this?" I asked. He glanced at it, barely blinking, then smirked. "You went through my pockets now?" His tone was cold, amused. I said, "You spent $20,000 from our savings. On what? Who's it for?" He took a step closer, eyes narrowing. "You really don't get how the world works, do you?" he said. "It's not your money, Laura. You don't make any." I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I stayed still. "So tell me, what woman gets a diamond bracelet from her boss?" I said quietly. His jaw tightened, then he laughed, that short, sharp laugh he used when he wanted to end a conversation. "You're being ridiculous. Stop acting like a jealous child. You wouldn't understand how men handle things." I stared at him, searching for the man I once knew. All I saw was someone who looked proud of what he'd done, as if I should feel grateful he'd even explained this much. I said, "So that's it? I'm just supposed to accept it." He shrugged. "You're overreacting. You've got too much time on your hands. Maybe find a hobby instead of snooping." Then, under his breath, almost like a joke, he said it. "Stupid housewife." Something inside me broke cleanly, like glass snapping under pressure. My throat burned, but no words came. I just nodded, folded the receipt, and placed it on the counter between us. He thought the argument was over. He poured himself a drink, turned on the TV, and laughed at something on the screen. I stood there in silence, watching him, feeling everything inside me shift. The part of me that once wanted to fix things was gone. All that remained was a quiet, steady anger, and the certainty that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. The next day, when Ethan left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with the receipt and my laptop. The name of the boutique was printed in small gold letters at the top. I called them, pretending to be confirming a shipment for my husband. The woman on the phone was polite and cheerful. "Yes, Mrs. Quinn, that purchase was picked up last Friday. It was gift-wrapped with a personal note for Ms. Savannah Cross." Her tone was casual, but my pulse slammed in my ears. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there staring at the phone. Savannah Cross. I knew that name. The memory came back like a bad taste. She'd been at Ethan's office party last spring, younger, with bright red lipstick and a laugh that carried across the room. She'd leaned close when she talked to him, touching his sleeve as if they shared a secret. I had noticed, of course, but Ethan brushed it off. "She's just a client," he had said. Now I could see it for what it really was. That bracelet, that perfume, they weren't business gifts. They were love tokens. I walked through the house in silence, every corner suddenly unfamiliar. The home we built together felt like a stage set, every happy photo now part of a performance. I looked at our wedding picture on the mantel and wondered how many lies had been hiding behind his smile. There was no explosion of anger this time, only a slow, steady understanding of what kind of man I'd married. Instead of confronting him again, I opened my notebook and began writing down every detail I could remember. Dates, amounts, names, even small things he said. My hands stopped shaking as I wrote. For the first time, I felt in control. He thought I was naive, but he had no idea who he was dealing with. That evening, when he called to say he'd be working late, I told him dinner would be waiting, my voice calm and even. After I hung up, I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I finally saw the truth. The woman he thought was his shadow, quiet, harmless, was no longer standing behind him. She was stepping into the light, watching, learning, preparing for the moment he'd never see coming. Days passed, and I spoke to Ethan only when necessary. He was busy, always rushing out with his phone glued to his hand, and I stopped asking where he went. The silence between us became a shield, giving me time to think. I started waking up earlier, making coffee, and sitting by the window with my laptop. I searched quietly, not for evidence anymore, but for escape routes. One afternoon, I called an old friend, Rachel, who worked in a small law firm. We hadn't talked in months, but when she picked up, her voice felt like a lifeline. I told her I needed advice, nothing official, just questions about shared accounts and legal rights. She didn't ask for details, only listened and told me what to do. Her words were calm, practical. "Start by protecting yourself," she said. I thanked her, my voice low but steady. That call changed everything. The next week, I opened a separate account under my name only. Each day, I transferred small amounts, 50 here, 100 there, just enough that Ethan wouldn't notice. It felt like dropping pebbles in my own pocket, slowly building a way out. I also found an online bookkeeping job, using a different name, something simple and quiet that paid just enough. At night, while Ethan slept, I worked with the soft hum of the computer keeping me company. The glow of the screen felt like a secret light in the dark. Ethan didn't notice the difference. He still left his shoes in the hallway, still barked questions about dinner, still assumed I was waiting for it. I answered politely, smiled when needed, and let him believe everything was the same. Inside, though, something was shifting, not a sudden break, but a slow turning of gears. I stopped wearing the perfume he bought me years ago. I changed my hair, wore simpler clothes, things that made me feel like myself again. I even started keeping a small notebook where I wrote my thoughts, not about him, but about who I wanted to become. Each quiet step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself he'd taken without asking. I didn't need him to see it. In fact, his blindness made it easier. He still thought I was that obedient wife in his shadow. He didn't realize I was already walking away, one silent decision at a time. Ethan came home one evening with that overly bright tone he used when he wanted something. He told me he was hosting a small dinner, just a casual business thing. I asked who was coming, and he mentioned a few colleagues, then slipped her name in like it was nothing, Savannah Cross. I kept my voice even, pretending not to notice. He smiled, thinking I was fine with it. I agreed to cook. The day of the dinner, I set the table with his favorite dishes, candles, and the good wine he saved for special occasions. I watched the clock, every tick sharpening my nerves into focus. When Savannah arrived, she looked exactly as I remembered, too polished, too pleased with herself. Her eyes swept over the house like she already belonged there. Ethan greeted her with a smile that lasted a little too long. I greeted her too, my voice warm, my smile smooth. No one would guess what I knew. Through dinner, I played the perfect host. I poured drinks, passed plates, asked polite questions. Savannah laughed at everything Ethan said, leaning forward just slightly, her hand brushing his arm as if by accident. He didn't pull away. Their glances weren't obvious, but I saw every one of them, small sparks they thought no one noticed. I kept smiling, nodding at their stories, my fork scraping lightly against the plate just to remind myself I was still there. When she complimented the meal, I thanked her and asked if she liked the wine. Ethan picked it, I said, watching her expression. For a second, she hesitated, just enough to confirm everything. He looked away, pretending to refill his glass. The room felt smaller after that, like the air had thickened with all the unspoken things floating around us. When the evening ended, Savannah gave me a hug before leaving. Her perfume clung to my sweater long after the door closed. Ethan locked up, turned to me, and smirked. "You didn't have to act so stiff," he said. "You get too emotional about nothing." His tone was careless, almost mocking. I didn't answer. I just picked up the wine glasses and carried them to the sink. The sound of running water filled the space where his words hung. Behind me, he laughed softly and walked away. I stayed there, my hands in the warm water, my face calm. The ache was gone, replaced by something sharper, colder, the kind of quiet that comes before a storm. After that dinner, I stopped wondering how far Ethan would go for her. I already knew the answer. I just needed proof. Late at night, while he slept with his phone face down beside him, I sat in the living room with my laptop and a quiet fury that kept me wide awake. I logged into our joint account again, scrolling through pages of transactions that no longer surprised me: fancy restaurants, hotel bookings, and transfers to a business name I didn't recognize. One transfer stood out. It wasn't a place I'd seen before, so I searched it. The name led to a boutique lease in Savannah's name, listed under Ethan's company. My stomach turned. He wasn't just cheating. He was financing her dream with money we'd saved together. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I took pictures of every statement I could find, careful not to leave anything open. I even found an email thread between him and a real estate agent, confirming payments for Savannah's shop. My fingers shook as I scrolled, but I didn't stop. I sent copies to myself from a hidden account I'd made weeks earlier. Every click felt like building armor. When he left for work, I called Rachel again. This time, I told her everything. She didn't sound surprised, just focused. "Laura, you need documentation," she said. "Every dollar that left your account, keep a record. Don't confront him yet." Her voice steadied me. I printed everything, labeled each page, and stored it in a folder beneath my clothes drawer. A few days later, I met Rachel in her office, pretending to be just another client. The place smelled like paper and coffee. We went over the evidence, line by line. She explained how his transfers could be traced back to our shared savings, how the court would see it as misuse of marital funds. Her calm confidence gave me strength I didn't know I had. I wasn't lost anymore. I was prepared. When I returned home that evening, Ethan was on the phone, laughing about some business deal. He didn't notice the look in my eyes. I walked past him quietly, placed my bag on the table, and smiled to myself. He thought he was winning. What he didn't know was that I'd already drawn the first lines of his downfall, all written in his own handwriting, every number a step closer to the end he'd built for himself. It happened on a quiet Thursday afternoon. My phone rang with an unfamiliar number, and I almost ignored it. But something made me answer. A soft, hurried voice came through. "Hi, could you let Ethan know the lease papers are ready? I'll bring the keys tonight. Oh, and tell him not to forget the envelope for the deposit." The name at the top of the screen made my breath still. Savannah Cross. For a moment, I said nothing. She must have mistaken me for someone else, maybe his assistant. Her tone was sweet, confident, comfortable in a way that told me she wasn't guessing. She knew him well. "Sure," I said lightly, pretending to type. "And which lease is this for again?" I wanted to hear her say it. She laughed softly. "The boutique, of course." He said, "Everything's almost settled. Once the divorce is final, it'll be under my name officially." Divorce. The word slid through the air like a knife. He had told her he was divorcing me. My hands didn't shake this time. I just stared at the wall, calm, detached, listening to her talk about our future money like it already belonged to her. She kept going, asking if he'd mentioned the launch event and the watch he promised to buy next. I let her talk, every sentence falling neatly into place, filling the spaces of a puzzle I'd been piecing together for weeks. When she finally paused, I said quietly, "I'll make sure he gets the message." My voice didn't crack. She thanked me cheerfully and hung up, unaware that she'd just handed me exactly what I needed. The house was silent after the call, but inside me something stirred. Not anger this time, not pain. It was colder, steadier, something close to satisfaction. I sat back on the couch and stared at my reflection in the dark TV screen. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who used to cry in this room. My lips lifted, slow and deliberate, the first real smile I'd felt in months. He'd told her lies, and now she believed them completely. That was fine with me. The longer they lived in that fantasy, the easier it would be to let it collapse around them. For now, I'd keep playing my part, quiet, invisible, patient. He wouldn't see me coming. Neither would she. Ethan's 40th birthday came around sooner than I expected. He had been talking about it for months, bragging about how he wanted something classy, nothing sentimental. I told him I'd handle it, and he didn't question me. He never did when it came to appearances. I spent the next few weeks preparing every detail, smiling when he mentioned how much he trusted me to make it perfect. He had no idea what I was building behind that smile. The night of the party, the house gleamed. The dining table was covered in white linen, glasses sparkling under the soft glow of the chandelier. I hired a caterer, ordered the wine he loved, and invited everyone he respected, his business partners, a few clients, even the ones he used to brag about impressing. And of course, I sent a polite invitation to Savannah, signing it as if it came from his office. I told her it was a professional celebration, something she wouldn't want to miss. When she arrived, dressed like she owned the room, Ethan froze for half a second, then forced a laugh. "You invited her?" he whispered. I leaned close and said sweetly, "You said she was important to your business." His face tightened, but he couldn't make a scene. The guests were already raising glasses, the music low and elegant. Everything looked perfect. After dinner, I tapped my glass and asked for everyone's attention. Before we cut the cake, I said, I thought it would be nice to look back at some of Ethan's accomplishments. He smiled proudly, adjusting his jacket as the lights dimmed. The slideshow began. At first, a few harmless photos, work events, trips, parties. Then, the numbers started appearing. Bank transfers, receipts, copies of boutique leases, emails confirming payments. Each image hit the screen like a hammer. The room went still. Ethan's smile vanished. Savannah's face turned pale as her own name appeared beside the boutique contract. Someone coughed. Another guest muttered under their breath. Ethan tried to speak, but his voice cracked. I didn't look at him. I simply said, everything here was paid for with our saving. Thought you all should know how generous he can be. Savannah stood abruptly and walked out without a word. The guests followed in uneasy silence, leaving Ethan alone with the mess he'd made. He turned to me, furious, but I was already walking away, the echo of applause and whispers following me down the hall. His reputation ended that night, not with shouting, but with the truth, shown on a screen for everyone to see. The morning after the party, the house was eerily still. The decorations were half-torn, a few glasses left on the table, and the smell of wine lingered in the... Ethan sat on the couch, his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red and swollen. You destroyed me, he said, voice breaking. Do you have any idea what you've done? I stood by the window, the sunlight cutting between us. No, Ethan, I said quietly. You did that all by yourself. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The confidence he used to wear like armor was gone. All that remained was a man who'd finally run out of lies. Over the next few weeks, everything around him unraveled. His company partners cut ties, clients pulled out of contracts, and word spread faster than he could control it. I didn't need to do anything. The truth did all the work. When the divorce papers arrived, he didn't even fight them. Maybe he knew there was nothing left to fight for. I met him one last time at the lawyer's office. He looked thinner, his suit wrinkled, his voice softer. He tried to sound reasonable, tried to blame me for being vindictive. You could have handled it privately, he said. I looked him straight in the eye. So could you, I replied. He signed the final papers with shaking hand, and just like that, our marriage ended with the quiet scratch of a pen. The settlement was fair. I kept the house, a portion of the savings he hadn't touched, and enough to start again. He left with a few boxes and the same arrogance that had built his downfall. Savannah, I heard later, tried to reach out to him again, but by then, he had nothing left to offer. His business was gone, his reputation ruined. Whatever fantasy they shared had vanished the moment money stopped flowing. When I walked through the house after he left, it felt larger, lighter somehow. There was no shouting, no tension clinging to the air. Just quiet. I didn't feel joy or vengeance, only peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop fighting for someone who never fought for you. I sat on the porch that evening, watching the sky turn gold, and for the first time in years, I breathed freely. Ethan had lost everything. I had only lost a lie. Months passed before I realized how much my life had changed. The house was gone, sold after the divorce, and with it went the ghosts that used to haunt every room. I rented a small apartment near the coast, one bedroom, pale walls, and a balcony that overlooked the water. The first night there, I slept with the windows open, letting the sound of waves replace the echo of old arguments. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread. Work came slowly at first. The bookkeeping job I'd taken during the worst of it turned into a steady stream of clients. I built my schedule around sunlight and coffee, no longer waiting for anyone's permission. My days were quiet but full. I kept track of every penny I earned, every hour I worked, and with each deposit, I felt more like myself. The woman who once depended on someone else was gone. Sometimes I caught myself thinking about Ethan, not with anger, just a distant kind of disbelief. It amazed me how small he seemed now, like a shadow shrinking in the rearview mirror. I didn't check what became of him. I didn't need to. My focus stayed on the life in front of me, the steady hum of my computer, the ocean breeze that slipped through the curtains, the simple rhythm of independence. One evening, while balancing my books, I noticed the total in my savings account. The number blinked on the screen, and I froze for a second. $20,000. The same amount he'd once stolen from our future, now rebuilt by my own hand. I laughed softly, not out of pride but relief. That number no longer represented loss. It was proof that I had survived. The next day, I walked into a jewelry store by the pier. I saw a silver bracelet in the display case. Simple, elegant, not flashy. I bought it without hesitation and fastened it around my wrist right there in the shop. It wasn't about replacing what he gave away. It was about reclaiming what he took from me. My worth, my confidence, my life. As I stepped back into the sunlight, the metal caught the light and shimmered. I smiled to myself and thought, the best revenge wasn't ruining his life. It was rebuilding mine. Hey besties, thanks for staying till the end of this wild story. Imagine your husband spending 20 grand from your savings on another woman and calling you a stupid housewife. Painful, right? But Lara showed us that real power comes from rebuilding, not revenge. If you liked this story, don't forget to like, share, drop a comment, and subscribe for more gripping tales. See you in the next one. Bye!